Finally! I see Vani like up the video, love up the video already too. She feel we listening. She feel we taking she advice. Like what going on? She see the recap.
Yeah, we're in the dance.
Good night, villagers. What are you telling all yourself on this fine Wednesday evening?
Wednesday.
2P boy, man Freudian slipping into the past. 2P, episode 2P.
Yeah, bro. Episode.
Oh, they didn't have a 2P in Naps,
Live
right?
class.
They didn't have a
Live class.
That's all the class.
Live class.
Oh God, big up. I think Romel told me he was in 1 hour or something. So
Yeah, Romel.
He was in 1 hour and 2 hours. Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, we used to play them every PE. It was P versus R.
How they end up with them names? Why not 1A, 1B, 1C? How they end up with 1R, 1P, 1?
It was
You know
it was
what I mean?
NMPR and then it became NAPS.
Yeah.
That's what going
Yeah,
on.
mother,
was an
they're
NMP.
broadcasting for PNM or something with NP.
NAPARIMA, dog. NPRM.
Let's see.
Leave out all the A's. And then they changed it to
I hear
NAPS
ya.
so we could spell ups, you know? So what let's tell now, let's tell well, I mean, we have a full show for people tonight. You understand? Yes, the
Yeah.
consonants, the balance, and all that. The consonants. NPR, really, but you know, and I see trendy thing now, you know, to leave out consonants and thing in your Instagram name and thing now. You know, let's go. So we was ahead of the curve.
Ahead of the time.
Yeah.
So we have a
True.
full show tonight. We don't have any guests coming tonight, as you would have pointed out in our ad, right? We have a recap going on. We're going to recap all the different topics we went through in the last month, and also all the topics in the news right now and the past weeks gone by that we didn't get to talk about as in depth as we would have liked to, right? So the first thing we're going to talk about is something with, I'll just say with finally, right? Finally. But let me see. Sorry, run the Oh, Shambi, what's going on?
Oh, Shambi. My boy Faris.
Well, what you collecting there? What you collecting there? Oh, you know what's going on there, right? Oh, you know what's going on there?
Oh, she wanted to smoke it right there or something?
You don't know what's going on.
Yes, Faris.
Oh, good.
You tell him thank you.
So this is Nazma Mullah. This is Miss Nazma Mullah. She is one of the biggest cannabis activists in Trinidad.
Right.
And what she did here was she bombarded him with a plant, as a gift, I believe. I'm not too sure of the actual fine details. It says here, Faris offered a plant. Founder of the Caribbean Union of Herb Farmers, Nazma Mullah, was among the people who confronted Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi outside the parliament in Port of Spain today, asking for answers regarding the status of the legislation that would allow for the growing of marijuana for medicinal purposes, right? So that was from CCN TV6 Facebook page, and other pages would have shown.
So the legislation that was passed before, that 30 grams, that is it? You can't grow on thing?
No, okay, so yeah, there has been the decriminalization that has all those things that we know about, and the updated laws which deal with possession, how much it could have. It still has the same charges if you're near school, certain places, even worse than before probably. If you have those things, in places where it shouldn't be. And the thing about it is there was nothing done about licensing. There was nothing done about legislation for growing. There's nothing done about anything really to do with the next step in using marijuana as a form of medicine, dispensaries, that kind of thing. Who's getting the licenses and that kind of thing. So what happened in here is that if you have marijuana plants, or you are allowed 4 marijuana plants per person, right? However,
This is why I remember it did have some. Yeah.
you can have 30 grams as well. Now, let me show you our heights here. The law is so vague and so non-progressive in terms of what we are talking about in terms of, getting people, dispensaries and people into licensing and legislation for medicinal growth and all of that. What we have here is that if police during this SOE run into your house, right, which they can very well do, if they run into your house and you have 4 plants, but the buds cut off the plants, you get in whole, because you then have now no longer a plant, you have bud now. You have like yeah. So if them bounce in and see that you have a set of bud that over 30 grams, and it's not like looking like a plant in your garden. It's like, you're selling your thing, you have too much thing. It's like, because there's a gray area there.
The traffic and them kind of thing.
There's a gray area. So in other words, you have to like, if you have 4 plants, you have to have the 4 plants. And if you want to smoke something, you have to like pick it off like a cherry. And like that, like I guess that's the concept or whatever. I'm not too sure what is really the heights there. But I mean, when it comes to 30 grams, walking on the road, you would think, but even in your house, you can't really say you're having all that bud and thing, just a wrong and thing now, because they will hold you, because you're only allowed 4 plants. You understand? It's a height.
Right. But I mean,
right now,
but that's
we don't know what's going on.
Still, though. Yeah, that's a strange thing though, Kota, because you see, if I think about it, right? So if I grow coca plants, I safe then.
Well, is the coca plant outlawed?
Hold the front low or hold the front.
Yeah,
low,
if the coca plant,
product,
if the coca plant is not outlawed, then yeah, you can grow it. I don't think coca plant is outlawed. I don't think, like, if somebody you have certain kind of compounds.
Well, you see, that the height I coming from is just how ridiculous the conversation is now. That we're talking about how governing a plant, but if you think of what other plant, you understand what I'm saying, have a law governing it. You don't have any. You understand? So the closest one I could think about is a cocaine plant. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
but we don't. You see, well, that would be outlawed in places where, like, it's normal to grow it and chew it, like in Colombia and thing and that kind of thing. It will be a heights there. Torian, what are you thinking about?
What I think is coming. What coming soon is it's just the beginning for them to start making their money off it. So they have to start putting the foundation.
Right.
To make
it's just a commercial.
When big business come to start making their money and government can start taxing. So it's just the beginnings of that, I feel.
Right.
Yeah, and this is
because in Vancouver, it's big.
Well, so yes, Vancouver out in BC there, plantations or fields, whatever it is you want to do, it big. So right now the government, you're only really supposed to get through them. It have dispensaries and thing where you could get, but it have real bacchanal where dispensaries get raided by police and shut down and they open back and police come up with big block and all kind of shippiness. So, but you could order through the government and the government will ship it to you right now as it stands in Canada.
Yeah, that mafia, that boy. Yeah, that boy. When they talk one mafia, that is mafia, boy. Yeah, because I could tell all out here have a slightly different. So, like how we would talk about ganja and things to get high out in the Caribbean. Out here, they just use what they call betel nut, which is it is look like them palm trees, them little betel nut. Correct. All right.
And
right. And exactly, like chenet. And in India is something called pani. You understand? Which similar. You understand? And it is wrap it in a leaf. All them things. But the point that I'm making, Kota, is all them things totally legal. It's like it just emerged from like an indigenous way of life now. It's like that's just how men just live. So like it's almost
men hooked on that shit though.
Always happy out here. But they hook, Kota, but they also not stressed. I could tell you, it have no records of suicide out here. It have I could tell you, I just pass random strangers and men just on vibes, men just cool, men just irie, you know what I mean? Nobody tense off, you know what I mean?
I'm more than the betel nut. I'm more than the betel nut.
Some studies will
Like more
show
than
that
the
people
mental.
is
True.
tuned to drug hunting.
That could be the culture. You know what I mean? Culture is just our vibes culture. Yeah.
It could be
That's
because
true.
you're right.
That's
Some
true.
people, some studies will show that like
Yeah,
people
yeah,
is
yeah.
turn to drugs when they are stressed enough. So they might be committing suicide.
True.
But because the drugs fixing whatever they need in that moment, they don't need to turn to suicide. So you never know. But as you say, it could
So
just be the
Yeah,
vibes.
yeah,
And
Caribbean
yeah.
Homestead just pointed out something that Datura is controlled. I did not know Datura is controlled. Datura plant, one of the most strongest psychotropic substances in this part of the world. You know, it is a plant we see all over Trinidad. If you boil the seeds and you drink that, you go into a serious hallucinogenic experience that could change you for the rest of your life almost. Some people is gonna what they'll say some people could go, you know, off the rails for a good while according to, you know, the dosage, because it's very, very, very strong. So Datura is controlled, but I never knew Datura was controlled. But we need to hear more about that from our friend, you know. Right, Miss Caribbean Homestead
But you see,
herself.
here's some food. Here's some food. I hate on that too. That I mean, probably all you never grew up with it. But I grew up drinking Soma. You know, all you ever hear about Soma? You understand?
Well,
Soma
you're drinking a version of Soma. You're drinking a version of Soma. Soma is from A Brave New World and is a substance that is a mythical substance like Amritna. You know, in Hinduism, the nectar Amrit, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, like Soma.
Right.
So what they call in Soma there, I would say, is just what they use the name from the book and they apply it, like you'll apply like skunk to the, or whatever, like, you know what I mean? Like I'll take a word
Right.
But you just cactus like peyote thing.
It's boiled cactus. We used to drink that growing up. And I could tell you, I remember, so I started to look up, cactus and things. Ayahuasca is a big thing in Mexico now. So I watched it, and apparently the type of cactus in Trinidad similar.
You drink cactus in Trinidad home?
Yes.
Did you
trip? We used to get drug at that, like Moby.
Did you trip?
Well, to be honest, my tolerance kind of high. Yes,
that's cactus
is jokey cactus. Right, jokey cactus. So earlier, it's official tonight. The SOE. It's official tonight. The SOE is 3 more months. They have, you know, we all knew it was coming because they needed a simple majority. So we just trying if you could pull up the headline.
About that too.
If there is a headline, if we have a headline, so the SOE would have been up today. Today they would have made the ruling in the House. Right, because we knew it was coming because it needs a simple majority. The House passes motion to extend SOE by further 3 months. Now, right now, the opposition is going very, very hard on this topic because, I mean, what else would they do when they don't know what else to do? So what they're doing is they are going clear with the whole why is the reason for it, all of that. I mean, a lot of people would support that sentiment because you all tell me, Torian, do you think Trinidad in 3 more months of a state of emergency?
That is a good question. So many things come to mind with that question. It's like, can the economy sustain 3 more months?
Well, first of all, the TFED is this, right? The TFED, good point, but say the TFED. From what we're seeing right now, retail is open, you know, and so on. So there are steps being made to just kind of open back the country, yet we are maintaining an SOE, which I find to be very strange,
contradictory.
Contradictory. Because we are having this state of emergency, but right now people are pretty much going back to semi-normal life, if you know what I mean. So we have the curfew. So if this comes back to the point I was making with Fayola, is it that we so need an SOE in order to keep a curfew, because a curfew is a suspension of our constitutional rights? But I would say the public health regulations and closing down bars and closing down people's businesses is also, the people's constitutional rights being taken away. So because of the pandemic, we know there's a reason why constitutional rights have been taken away, like through public health ordinances. Could we just have a curfew without having an SOE? I kind of not understanding what. So we kind of right now constitutional and what is constitutional and what is not constitutional is really up for debate right now in Trinidad in a big way, and that is really something that really deserves a lot of attention. And people who challenging this I mean, yes, we understand the need for measures, but like it's very strange now that you really don't know what is rights and what is not rights, and which rights could be taken when and which rights can't be taken when, and all of this kind of thing now. So it's really confusing when it comes to that, I would say. Let's see.
Yeah. But remember, we talked about that at length in the episode with Feola Yakata. And one of the things we was pointing out is even within that episode, we couldn't pinpoint, well, what was the specific measurable reason that triggered the first SOE. You understand? Because it went from stay-at-home measures to lockdown to SOE. And we were saying, well, what really triggering this thing? And at the time, we ended up trying to come up with a reason for the government and say, well, it's probably the capacity of the hospitals. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
but remember how bad it was then. It was like nearing 100%. Since then, things would have gotten all better. So why would you go for further? You know what I mean? It's kind of like they're like powers that the government would have gotten. So it's like you want to continue with those sort of powers. You know what I mean? It's like they're like the powers, you know?
Keeping in that line thing there is a more preventative kind of scene, you know? Because it's like people will go crazy if you give them the opportunity to go crazy, right? So if we use an example or the reason rather, we say they want to keep the hospitals as functioning as possible. You can't open back things like normal, as Bisham say, Delta variant in Trinidad. No, Delta variant hitting everybody, young and old, you know. Young children dying from that now. Younger people dying from that now. So it's like you can't just open back up like normal either at the same time. So it is like everybody like to criticize the government in hindsight, but the situation governments are in throughout the world is a very difficult situation. Anything you do could be misconstrued as the wrong thing, really and truly.
Yeah. So let me ask all of this. Anybody right now in the comments? Anybody right now here in the Heights stream with me right now? What does the SOE do right now as it stands with everything that we understand and what I pointed out with, the place opening back? What does the SOE provide? The SOE, an SOE, a state of emergency. What does the SOE provide, and how does it apply to a deterrent? Where is the deterrent?
The SOE itself and the increased police powers to police people behavior. If people want to gallivant and go crazy,
the military,
we're really doing.
Because without the SOE, you can't have the military, correct?
You can't. Right. Exactly.
Okay. So you're saying that. So in case people do like what things? Let me think of something. Where you think police will have to do that? Like in what situation?
I mean, all who want to have this party and all that kind of thing is what comes to mind immediately.
Right. But before we had the SOE, before the this is the thing, right? This is the thing. Hey, I know about that
because he was in Nazareth party.
I know about that.
You see the little ball on the hand, is the fat.
Hey, that's my Rocky boy. Weekend gone was Raksha Bandhan.
Not that hand, the next hand.
So, you know what I was saying, right? Now, here what I was saying. Before we had a SOE, fellas, there were limits on the amount of people through the public health ordinance, right? Police could, through the public health ordinance, do all those things before. It seems to me that the SOE is what they have to do for some reason in order to enforce the curfew, which is the only reason. And even with the curfew, so with open and back the country, what all I'm saying is that the SOE as a measure, right now, it is like a very looming thing, because like, so what if somebody want to abuse that power now, when it is that we have things already in so it's like this. It's like you have the cockset and the bop thing in your house, and you can handle the threat, right? But have a man coming in your room every day with the big thing going that is coming past around. Yeah. So every day a man coming in your room and it's like, dog, it tells you all that because we have
things. Just in case the man don't come that day.
Yeah, true.
One day the man could not pass enough.
You see, you see, what we saying is that it's not a matter of the severity, Cutter. It's a matter of what resources you have. So in other words, you're low on cockset, and you're low on cockset not now. You're low on cockset the entire year. So you need to have the military support. You understand? So they just figure, well, you know what? Let me leave the SOE in place so that we could call out the military.
If you're in lock, Luan Cox said to leave the parlor open. That you let it do. You leave the parlor open. You don't close down nobody. Anyhow, we agree to disagree on this one. All right. So right now the Johnson and Johnson vax has been started given out. Today they gave it out to places, I think in remote parts of the country. If we can pull up the headline there. So what we're saying is that J&J's are one shot. All right. J&J's are one shot. So first, I think with that in mind, they deployed it in the remote areas in order for people in those areas to have a one go because of transport issues or whatever be the case. Yeah, keep it simple. So it's places like Cedros and so on. I'm not sure if we have anything headline wise for that, but I believe it happened.
One second.
I believe it happened today. All right. So what is saying there is that all right, so it could come down there. All right, Amazon bring it down there, right? J&J reserved, right? What they said, reserved for what rural communities are being given.
Remote communities.
Right. So rural community. I mean that's a pretty good move. Now notice, speaking of rural communities, Munilala and them had to make a noise for South to get more places for the children to get the Pfizer because they give Sando and Labrie, right? That's the two places in South, Sando and Labrie. So I see Floyd make a joke on Twitter saying, people from Gulf is neighbor. You understand? Because it's like Sando and Labrie. Whereas in other parts of the country, there wasn't that kind of disparity in terms of the limit, the distance. So I think they opened up something down Separia or Pinal or somewhere with one of those UTTs or one of the places there to do the children to get the Pfizer. All right. I mean, all these things, are valid concerns when it comes to people getting access to the vax. Now, speaking of children and school and all of that, school is not opening, as they were saying, in terms of physical anymore. It's opening virtual. It's virtual school.
Virtual school, yeah.
Because they don't have... Yeah, just like how we have a SOE and, those kind of things that they were saying, we ain't ready to go back to school. School needs to still stay online until we can see numbers going up.
So that was the same plan that Twitter was saying. They didn't agree on that kind of thing and the PTA and all that kind of thing, and they say, well, hold that and basically come again.
Well, the implementation plan would still stand in that, what Twitter and other people would have had as the lack of consultation as a problem. But what you have here is that there are implementation plans, but they don't know when to. They don't feel confident in kickstarting that anytime soon in terms of people going out physically. They will stand still with the same measures, which is like if exam class wants to go out, like to do a lab or something, that has always been the thing that they can do that. But to say that we have any blended learning or things that people churn across the board going out into schools for any reason, it is not happening right now. And I think we know why. We're not in a position to do that. And right now,
they now start vaccinating.
Exactly. And right now, a big bacchanal taking place there. A big bacchanal taking place there because your boy Kitos tell people, all your back, Kitos come out and say something to the effect in his Kitos in his tone that all get all your children vaccinated or else.
Yeah, he said he go jump in. He have no fear to intervene. A more hardline approach.
And we know how the hesitancy with the adults is, right?
Well,
he's hinting at a more hardline approach. Now, this is where, notice around the Caribbean, we have 24%. We're doing pretty good compared to Jamaica. You know how much percent of Jamaica is vaccinated right now?
Yeah, like some single digit, 4% or something so?
4%.
Yeah. Yeah. I was shocked when I see that.
Sure.
Not crazy.
Why is that? Availability of vaccine, men just don't want to take it.
Like Rasta. Rasta don't play. Rasta don't work for no CIA. Rasta don't take no vaccine.
You want no microchip?
Yeah. So it's a lot of things because I have been seeing a lot of rhetoric from Buju and thing about how the pandemic and thing Israel not
well, I was surprised. I was really surprised at religious bodies and how big, like their stances on the vaccine real strong, like out here, Dread. I could tell all your real churches standing up on the vaccine, and they're saying like it's the mark of the beast, and
but the big
they're
man
using
himself.
a set of biblical verses to try and justify no vaccine. Who big man?
The big man himself, Pope Francis, come out and say, time to take vaccine. So at least the head of the Catholic Church.
The Pope also the Pope also said gay is okay.
But you see, out here is mainly Protestants, so that's the difference.
Yeah, and I mean there are different sects. There are different sects of Christianity, and they range in their intensities in certain ways. Yeah, the 5G didn't kick in. We know that the synapses don't work. We know that. So the thing is, right? What you have going on is this, right? From how I see it, anything that a religious organization, whether it be Hindu, Muslim, Christian, whatever, anything that they can use once they see fit, for whatever reason, anything that they can use to their advantage to make them seem as a more sure way in order for in order for them or to seem more important, in order for us to feel more powerless, right? Because when you have something as dread as the pandemic, and we know, I mean, we've been living through it for almost going on a year and a half into 2 years just now, right? When this is the thing that is ruling the world, it is easy now with people's, thinking and their fears to say that's what you're going on, right? All they had to realize, this is not a normal thing that anybody could explain. Science and have no handle on it. And so all these years now, you're taking all the medicine, you're going for all your chemotherapy and everybody going and all of us now science and know nothing. Them thing not important. Them thing is a sham. Only us who closer to God could help all you, and that's how it is go. And that's the mafia right there.
Yeah.
That's how it's going on.
No, well, let me tell you how important that is because when I talk to a few people down here, is exactly that. What you find is that they're not. So when I started getting the conversation with them about the actual verse in the Bible, and they talk about the mark of the beast and whether it really relates to the COVID, they don't really understand the logic, What they're saying is, boss, my pastor say we ain't going on that road, so therefore the whole church too in the line of the pastor. You understand what I'm saying? And I say, well, boy, fair enough.
The pastor is the connection.
You understand what I'm saying?
And that is what the problem with organized religion is. We'll get to the next episode because I could talk a whole next 2 hours about that. But anyway, so let's try to break down some of our episodes. You want to go a little international news? Let's see where you feel an international news vibe, or you're feeling to go down the recap and the things.
No, we could
Your
go
call.
In the recap, man. We could go in the recap.
All right, so in the recap, we want to talk about when we had Omar on. We had Omar here to talk about climate change, global warming, climate change versus global warming, all of that. Where did Greta go? The fallacy of climate change. And I would say that it was a very enlightening talk. Who was on the episode? It was just 3 of us and Omar?
It was Faraz.
Right. Yeah. Faraz and Omar, correct. I know it was somebody else. Well, I was with Faraz all the time, so
you know when.
Yeah. So this that's probably like what, 3rd, 4th show or something.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So in that discussion, there was a lot of things on it, especially with, I know Faraz was able to show us, that when it comes to the cogs in the machine of how the system is running, when it comes to fossil fuels and all these things, there's no way the science could be disproven that we have made an impact now, on it. And I know the main thing, Leslie, you were trying to bring across is, the basic thing, which I would say was already proven, if it even real, you know what I mean? If it even real. But I think the more important thing to take away is, do we really understand that human actions have ramped it up to a scale that is tipping things to a point of no return. Let's see, maybe
Yeah.
you want to say what you thought about
Yeah,
that conversation.
and remember, I think one of the main takeaways from that episode was for people to stay curious, stay skeptical. That, you know what I mean. The reason we push that kind of provocative rhetoric of is climate change real is to point out to people that, you know, don't just run down the road when people say, hey, climate change real. You know what I mean? Climate change is the worst and that kind of thing. Listen, take the time and do the research. You know what I mean? Learn from what the men saying. You know what I mean? So we talk a lot about what we consider settled science and what settled science was. We talk a lot about the medieval cooling period and this researcher, I forget the guy's name, but the guy who was founded by the Koch brothers, who, you know, came up with a proposition that climate change could have been caused by solar irradiation. You understand? So there are different theories out there in terms of governing this kind of thing, and that, like when they say, you're big on your sense. You know what I mean? That's what we saying, that you're big on your sense, so just don't run down a road. Understand why? And Omar came up with a really heavy hitting point when we talked about, well, when I made the point that if you look at all temperature rise graphs, it basically starts from 1850 to now. And if you look at 1850 to now, that is just a blip in the time epoch that actually governs the earth now. So if you look at temperature rise just in that place, of course the temperature would look as if it rise. But if you go back 3, 4, 5,000 years, how much millions of years, you're going to get a very different thing. But the reason you only get in 1850 was because the technology was available from there. And Omar bring out the height, which is that heat doesn't equate to climate change. And he said that is why people not really using in nomenclature so much of global warming anymore, is that you actually have certain places on the earth right now that is the coldest it's ever been. And that is signs of climate change. So it's that you're not really using, it's not really global warming is the consistent, is one big issue. And of course, when we talk about it, when we come back another episode to talk about the holes in the ozone layer and whatnot, we can reach on that. But specifically, what we spoke about in that had to do with, that nomenclature and that,
Right.
climate change is more than that. Recently, just last week actually, was the first rain we ever had in Greenland for
I've seen that.
centuries, I think.
I want to say it was ever.
And
yeah. I saw that.
ever, yeah.
Ever.
So, I mean,
And we don't know what is ever, but ever for we. Yeah. Ever.
Yes,
Ever.
all I was part of the heights. Ever.
Well, let me move on to an episode where I was like a fully done character when I was sitting down in the room, because while it was going on too, I guess some news too about my dealings with certain people over the years, right? That was coming through the YouTube, right? And I realized that I might have to take child support or whatever. But it's all
dry pool in UE.
It's all part of the process. It's all part of the process, right?
Yeah.
Chris Parag.
If you are no haters, you ain't doing nothing good. You know, so.
I think that's a lover more than a hater. The modeling of a pandemic. The modeling of a pandemic with Chris Parag. Let's see. He would have broken down a lot of what exactly they look at when they're modeling and things. But what would you say was some of the main takeaway points that should sit with the average human being who's not a mathematician and saying, what do we have to understand about that science more than anything else in terms of what is important for us to understand?
Yeah, I think the big thing that people had to take away is that epidemiological modeling is very different to epidemiology. You understand what I'm saying? So when we listen to we good friend who just come up on the news and thing, what's the man named by? Avery Hines or something, so, and he come and put up the graph on that kind of thing. You're getting perspective and you're getting the graphs, but a lot of that comes from the hard work that these mathematicians that would be doing, and that there's a lot of science and mathematical theories and so on that govern something like that. And Chris went into the history from the late 1800s, to delve into where this thing would have come from, certain examples of where it would have been applied. In the case of the cholera outbreak, where it had a fire hydrant that was the source of bacteria, was the modeling that guys do to figure out, well, listen, is this fire hydrant that causing it? So is a mathematical way of predicting where a virus is going to spread, which adds as an additional tool for decision makers to try and get ahead of the virus. You understand?
Yeah.
Because the virus is basically, this thing's spreading. And Chris even went as far as explaining like the R numbers and that kind of thing to show that for different variants, Broad Street pumps, as Narad said, that's the one way. So you talk a lot about like how these parameters change depending on the virus, depending on the environmental conditions. So for like the Delta variant, you were saying like the original models, you really couldn't use that to model some of the variants. You know what I mean? So this Delta variant in India, they spread totally different. You understand what I'm saying? And even right now in the world, you have a situation where in UK and India, fellas, that come up in the news a couple of days now, the Delta cases dropping off, it plummeting. You understand? And nobody knows why. You understand what I'm saying? Nobody knows why. You understand? I don't know if you could pull it up there, Tori, and it in the international,
section.
So what do you mean it's dropping off?
Yeah, so I mean, is because remember, India was, no crematorium space, no hospital space. Remember, that was the situation about a month and something ago. You understand what I'm
Delta
saying?
is from them, right? Delta is from their area originally or something, right?
Yeah. So apparently England get hit with that as well too. And England numbers was skyrocketing as well. And probably about a week now, you understand, guys, numbers start to plummet and nobody really knows what's the reason why. You understand what I'm saying? So a lot of people postulating, you know what I mean? Yeah, the waves.
Herd immunity.
Yeah, see, look, some men talking herd immunity talk. Men say it receded, and men saying it have already received. Yeah, that's receded. Yeah. So is a kind of heights with that now. So a lot of people talking that it could be herd immunity. It could be. I see one of the big the ivermectin men jumping on it, and the ivermectin men saying it's not vaccination because India one of the lowest vaccination rates that you would get in the world. So therefore, is actually that the doctors took matters in their own hands and used ivermectin, which is a kind of antibiotic thing that few big pharmacies could make money off of, and that is how they stabilize in their numbers. But of course, the hole in that theory,
it could be postulation.
Yeah, you see, the hole in that theory is that so the UK use it as well, and a lot of people say now, well, hopefully the US will be next because the US numbers skyrocketing as well because the whole point Biden plan because remember he take over at the heights of this COVID thing, right? Mm-hmm. So what he told the population is that he not like a traditional politician. Well, I have 4 years, so I go in and build road, build bridges, this kind of thing. He come in and basically say, by the end of 2021, we will see the back of this COVID thing. He couldn't promise anything other than that. So that causing a lot of problems for him right now because apparently Fauci and CDC and all of them saying, listen, you have to renege all of that because these numbers just not going down. You understand? So now they're talking a spring 2022 kind of talk because they didn't cater, it seems, for like the winter, making in winter, winter coming back up and that kind of thing.
That kind of adds to one of the points that Chris brought up as well. That is that the information they put into these models is constantly evolving and changing things. And what they might have put 6 months ago will change to what is going on today. And people need to keep that in mind. So it's not that the people don't know what they're doing. It's just that as we see in science in real time, almost so to speak, with this pandemic. It's like so things will change. It's not necessarily to doubt.
That's right.
Things will change, the information change, and the results will change.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he said, he talked about, that the science, isn't perfect. And I think what is important, right? What I would have seen as most important to bringing Chris on and bringing other specialists in the fields on is to show that no one is saying that the science has all the answers now. Obviously, some people think that the past has all the answers, but that's beside the point, right? The science doesn't have all the answers because the science is constantly evolving with a threat that is constantly evolving, right? What we have to really look at is so many years have passed where science has stepped up to the fore and has managed to get things under control when the need arouse, and when that arises. And the thing about it is some people just really don't understand how much of a threat COVID-19 is because of the fact that it doesn't tie into what they believe how they should see the world and see, the fact that people are dying or whatever. Like they would say things like, look at the amount of deaths compared to this thing. How come this thing wasn't a pandemic? Totally missing the fact that it is because of a lot of science that we have in our societies that has kept the numbers down and didn't end up being a 1920 plague in a horse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot more deaths now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
see, we all, see, is a height to a cutter in the sense that, well, you see, we looking at it from a perspective of being rebels. I know how much of a rebel to the religious institution Torian is, but I know I can talk for myself, and from what I got, you are a rebel yourself.
Torian,
so
one long time.
I'm but a humble man.
Why? Yeah. So you see, why I'm saying that is that we grew up in a space where you see plenty of people grew up part of the church, part of the mandir, part of the mosque, where this your whole life now, dread. So you see, men had a kind of trust in them people to a point where they would trust their life. Them men will take arms to these people. So it's something that I would call, the trees, you know what I mean? The pastor, the pundit, and the pulpit. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like you're looking at all of them, but all of them basically have this kind of whole. And the question is science diametrically opposed to that? And, can science coexist with that? And what I'm saying is that 20 years ago, the kind of conversations about like what we having with Chris, what we just have here on the Heights room about Broad Street Pump and Fourier series and our number and them kind of thing, how it is that level of heights now, boy, that wouldn't have been the conversation 20 years ago. 20 years ago, would that be, let me go down by the rum shop or let me go down on the beach, and you understand what I'm saying? But now it's needed because information and technology now, boy. You understand?
Study. If this had happened to me in 1990, right? If this had happened to me in 1990 before the internet, it would have a whole different world reaction to this pandemic. We would have had people who don't want to take it. We'd have had the religious vibes and things. But right now, when you really look at people who are against it, religion is part of it, It have politics, that religion. It have right, it have left. It have vax, it have anti-vax. It have organic, it have thing. It have all kind of thing, right?
No,
it comes down to people, and people get umbrella together because a man might not be anti-vax, but he against what's going on with COVID vaccines. Then you have a man who will say that he against the vaccine, but the pandemic real. And next man will say, don't wear no mask. The vaccine is shit and the pandemic not real. And it's like, okay, it's good. It has so much different,
too much intersection, so much Venn diagram and
and it's all because of our good friend, which we are all on right now, called the internet. It is just that is just what the internet is. It's a new world.
And that's why, and that's why it's so important. You see, and that was one of the big things that Chris come out with, which, you know what I mean? I always really look forward to Heights with Chris and big my boy Dennis in particular too, in that when the conversation start, one of the things that I would point out is the men separate pseudoscience from science very quickly now, like, you know what I mean? And that I think is a very important thing that we're trying to do in Heights Room too, in that you will find the average conversation will carry you up to 45 minutes and that kind of thing. 45 minutes into our conversation, that could still be pseudoscience you're talking, You understand what I'm saying? But it's when you reach 50 minutes and when you reach the hour, you realize, oh shoot, now boy, that's not the full heights there. You understand? The full heights is and that's what he said. But plenty men just doing that pseudoscience thing and you understand what I'm saying? And running with it now, boy, you know what I mean? But it's so correct when you talk about body politics because I tell you, when I was working in the corporation, it actually had some MPs and councillors around election time tell me the same thing. They say, well, time to ramp up for election. Get in touch with the churches because we could mobilize the message through them. That was the message.
Yeah,
So
exactly,
in
exactly.
Trinidad, that's a big rhetoric. That is how the politics does get the message out. You understand what I say? They say, well, here we're talking
yeah.
this one, you know?
And it comes down to, as Sid saying here, relationship to authority, you know? It comes down to people's relationship to authority. What do we understand? And authority is to blame too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Science and everything too has, like, remember, science is, as a field is one thing, but then we as human beings and thing is like, we still ain't get to the point where as a human race, the pandemic has revealed a lot, and you're seeing it,
Yes, it has.
you know.
True.
And I
wait
told,
for all the books and studies to come out after about how society was.
Yes,
during
because
these
people
last-
say, you know, the new normal. And I was telling Torian this, and I was telling all this. I was like, we're talking about how, you know, since the pandemic, people saying how this pandemic going to change, you know, how we do business. It's going to change this. It's going to change the new normals. How society is running. But what it changed more than anything is how we as human beings are perceiving each other and our place in the world and the space in the world and what is important. Authority, science, your fellow man, things
challenging
like
your beliefs.
it's challenging it, and it really and I don't think that we're gonna go back to how in terms of we was before, because what it did, right, was we was, as I say, because the internet was splintering for so long into like different schools are taught, like in terms of how people, you know, these communities that we are in now, like this community we have here right now, right? We've been splintering so up into like these deeper communities, and in so much of them there's a lot of bias, and so much of them there's a lot of hatred, and so much of them there's a lot of you know, these things that aren't too positive for society. And around political times and thing, people go show the colors, like here, you know, like, you know, you'll see people come out of the shell and be jackasses and thing, and you know, be racial or whatever it is. You see it in America, see it here, see it everywhere. But now we have a reality which is not an event, which is not planned, although some people go call it the pandemic, right? And now the whole world has to just now show those true colors right through, because life is changing, and now it's not just the order of things, but it's just we as people now, everything that we were, all our biases, all of our misinformation and so on, or our information is now clashing at a rate that is, I never see something like happen like this, where the whole world just clashing over things. Like right now in Trinidad, the amount of hesitancy and misinformation there is, it's like alarming, and I really don't know what more or what has been done, you know, what has really been done to tackle that in the way that it could really make a dent. But again, as you say, Leslie, it comes down to these different ways of thinking and where people will put their most into now, you know, and that's just where we reach right now, you know. So speaking about,
and you see
we want to move on to the next topic now. So speaking about what people thinking and the church and so on, and you know, the colonial rule and all this. That's where our good friends Renell and Scott came hardcore when they spoke about LGBTQ rights and equality. What was the name of that discussion? The experience, right? The LGBTQ experience in TNT. So this is another thing where a lot of what would have taken place over our years of conditioning through the church, right, allowed for people to become one track in how they view something, because it does not fall in line with, okay, so that's another thing I would say, when it comes to how people view people of that community, it all comes down to that doesn't line up with things. And remember, that is a big fear now. If they are not in line with something that is heavenly or whatever it be, the fear now in Trinidadians is like, how do we not hate that because it is devilish now? You understand? And it really comes down to unpacking, as Ronaldo was saying, that our worldview has to change. In that, if the Pope, as Torian was saying, the Pope come and say what he said earlier, Torian, he went and say
that take the vaccine. The vaccine is an act of love.
the Pope say the vaccine is an act of love. The Pope then the Pope also say that that he cannot condemn homosexuals.
Yeah, that was
come
out, sometime ago,
and you know, and we get to see that how even with the worldview of people who are within the religious bodies and thing, we get to see that they are able to put certain things aside because of the change that we have seen over the years with people's acceptance to these realities. And we recapped that. So we recapped of our recapception, because we recapped our first conversation with James Lancer and Terence Bhagwan Singh, and the kind of things that were being said there that weren't really steeped in any kind of hard fact, but just opinion,
strong belief
and beliefs. So I don't know, Torian, what was your thoughts on that episode? How you think it went, and what you really gleaned from Scott and Renell?
It was interesting. Being in Canada, a lot more, shall we say, liberal or tolerant society, and although some may see that word tolerant is not the ideal word, sorry, but I was kind of exposed. It was sad to hear of his one experience, Scott's experience of not being accepted into A levels at his school, and that stood out to me because it's like sometimes you don't think. You just think like, oh, nothing will happen, whatever. But that is clearly a momentous occasion in any student's life, and that probably would have had an effect on many things in his life afterwards. So it was just, I was kind of glad that he felt comfortable to bring that up, and out of everything, that kind of stood out to me the most. That like, people's belief does have an effect, and some folks just don't want to get fight down like that. Why should they get that fight down? Just like everybody else, just want to have opportunities like everybody else.
Bring up that comment day from Caribbean Homestead Day. Bring it up. Anything challenging the patriarchal colonial perspective is revolutionary. Rigid gender roles are necessary in the colonial design for the imposition of violence by men on men and on women. At the end of the day, it's fair we roll in with people. In the patriarchal colonial perspective, right? When it comes down to and up to today, the order, the hierarchy in our system and the colonial perspective still exists today, because through what one of its greatest children, which is capitalism, right? You get the sense that everything is built on a certain line that is on a instituted fear. You understand? And that whether it be the fear of eternal damnation, whether it be the fear of an enemy from abroad coming to, like the war on terror, right, which didn't really any weapons of mass destruction, whatever it be, to get people to go and fight the wars, to continue the cogs in the machine of it. And we could talk about, when it comes to talk about war, we just see what happened with the Taliban. We might come to that just now. All right. This is what has been instituted in order for people to walk the line. These are all things. So when you look at all these different things that we are talking about when it comes to biases and so on, they have all been instituted into society for us to walk certain lines. Because if we tear down these things, then you're not going to walk those lines, because you realize there's no need to get on so about XYZ, because you have a belief that this is going to damage and this is going to, if you understand what I'm saying.
And you see, on top of that, Koto, is also something that where you get to realize is a means for power. You see, it's all about gaining power. You know what I mean? And fear is one of the strongest. I mean, Hitler talked about that. You know what I mean? That keeping a society in fear is one of the main roots to power and maintaining power. Which is why the Taliban wouldn't want to encourage like women to get educated and that kind of thing and whatnot, because education is a means of overturning that. You understand? Yeah. So you find, but you see what it begs the question, and that's why it's so important in terms of the work that the Silver Lining Foundation and they're doing. Because remember, yesterday they would have launched the research that they would have done. You know what I mean? This is on the national
That's
schools. They
true.
actually launched it
Robust.
yesterday because they spoke a lot about that, which I was really impressed with in terms of the depth and rigor of the research that they would have done on bullying and LGBTQ rights and so on across national secondary schools. I think they did across the country, and it was a very comprehensive document. And yeah, they launched it yesterday. So what these organizations then do is like they reclaiming that power now. Is like, you know, because if you think of a place like Trinidad and Tobago, I mean, we not colonial, we post-colonial. So why give that patriarchal colonial perspective that kind of authority and power to shape our systems and lives? You know what I mean? So you have some of these kindred spirits, these kindred organizations flying the flag now, boy. You know what I mean? Of being that emblem of freedom. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, you know, bring that kind of heights. Bringing, yeah, look the heights there. You understand what I'm saying? No? I would advise you to go and take a look at it.
Right. Yeah, because it's I mean, we have to be fair now to what it is really going on, and this is why I always, you know, was kind of heated about, you know, when we were debating in the first episode with the topic. Is like, history has proven that these are the people around us for centuries and eons to go on and eons to come. And if it is that we are in a society where we need to update our Equal Opportunity Act, we have to do it, because there can be no negative to allowing people to be treated equally. There can be no negative. We're not saying that they have to get a one up on anybody. That's when people to get equal treatment. You understand?
Yeah.
It comes down to that.
Yeah.
Now the next the topic that we discussed last week, and that was the reality of cocoa. All right. And if I only had my partner on that song, I am a cocoa vendor, but I don't know if we yeah, you know, that's a throwback. I don't even think Ronald remember that one. But that was a really illuminating discussion, I must say, with Gillian Goddard and Laura Lalman. Let's see, maybe you want to tell us some of your big takeaway points from that episode.
Jed, I mean, it was a different level of heights for me because you know, the depth and breadth of knowledge that Gillian and Laura brought to the conversation was one that was hard to keep up with. You know what I mean? That we were talking about certain specific things, and you know, they spoke about such a broad perspective. Like I honestly thought that cocoa was brought in Trinidad from the colonial, you know what I mean, like whether it was Dutch or England or somebody like so. You know, for she to get a heights, listen, this thing emerged from Latin America, 3,000 years, you know what I mean? And, you know, she talked not only about that, but, you know, when she bring the perspective on the Willy Wonka, that Willy Wonka thing hit my heart, but it's like, I look at that, and I'm like,
the Oompa Loompa,
you know, to see such a celebrated person like Roald Dahl, because remember Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling said she was inspired by Roald Dahl, and Roald Dahl is one of the biggest
writers.
Writers, you know what I mean? He come alongside a Milner thing who did Winnie the Pooh series.
Yeah, he's one of the best though. He's one of the best.
You know what I mean? So it's something where to see that them men could have been so racially charged. You know what I mean? And then, you know, she went further to even talk about, like, you know, the depths of understanding the chocolate supply chain and how brutally unfair that system is in terms of the returns now. That, you know, farmers getting literally next to nothing, and even how patriarchal that system is, Dread. You know what I mean? So even when Laura come and show the heights about how much they had to work with communities, and, you know, there's this one girl, you know what I mean, who I think they say was 21, who like running the whole company now. Them thing was real heights to me, boy. Real heights.
Yeah. You see it
was real heights to me too. And good on the grassroots organizations for promoting things like that and or setting up the ability for situations like that to come about in the first place. Yeah, that was the real heights for me now. And the whole show was heights, as you say, in Truth. It really was.
You know, and the whole concept of, you know, values still holding us a place in the business world. You know, that is something that we could get into more, you know, and we will get into more at some point with Gillian and probably more of her comrades. You understand? Because there's something about especially, you know, being in our kind of post-colonial plagued society when it comes with, like, you see business, dog, and money, and we can see we see it from the corruption, and the politics go straight down to the corruption with businesses, like, you know, with, you know, from the awarding of contracts to just to, like, you know, how, you know, the monopoly certain companies have emerged with, like, you know, that there's this one company that since inception is the one company that could bring this one product that is an essential product for Trinidad and Tobago. And it's like, this is just, you know, and people understand that these are things. And then you understand, you know, when it comes to the port and the customs and this and that, and you just, there's just this air that, you know, if you're going to do business in Trinidad, you have to be crooked in some way or the other to get things to flow. If you're going to have it and to be and to be ambitious and to want to really make it big in business, to actually have a company and a conglomerate or whatever it be that employing people and bringing value to the society. Because at the end of the day, you know, people just go off on this thing about the 1% and the 1% and this and the other. At the end of the day, people always bring up the point too that they are employing so many people, which is the truth. You understand? So where's the middle ground? Because we do know that within those circles, we have seen where she pulled her product.
Like, there's no excuse now, boy.
Exactly.
Like they try to use it as like a guilt trip. Like, okay, you had to thank them because Occupy Wall Street was that too. Remember that? When it Occupy Wall Street, and it was the same thing. And the man jumped in the lady face and was like, "Yeah, but how much people you employ? I employ 150 people. Yeah, but that's no excuse. So I mean, what you're doing is basically raping the system now, boy. I mean, Gillian had done the maths for us fellas where she was showing is like on a $10 chocolate bar cocoa farm, making less than 60 cents now, dread. You understand what I'm saying? And you see, that just show a heights like it's not a small amount. Men getting ripped off now, boy. You understand what I'm saying? It's like, you know, is a real different level, and it's forcing people to work at such a hard level. You know what I mean? That, like, we would talk about it from a theoretical perspective, and it was really good to have someone like Gillian come and talk about from a real perspective who faced the fight. Like, you know what I mean? She had to push, and you know what I mean? It's a good thing she had the networks, as she talked about all in Ghana, Malawi, all these places. So, you know, that element of fear that they try to impose would not affect, you know what I mean, this system that she create now, boy. You know what I mean? And you know that way, you know what I mean, even when she talk about the forest setting up them cyclical systems, you know what I mean, is all it was realized now, but you know what I mean, that, you know, all lending to that whole
pull up that comment.
Transcending that field.
For most businesses, people, a level of unawareness is a requirement to be able to function. Environmental, social, etc. And you know, and if you're unawareness, you know, purposeful unawareness, because what you take it's really it'll come like this. Yeah, exactly. It'll be like this. Were you studying that for? No.
That's right. You're hitting the nail on the head.
But I mean, let me look at something that's coming to me just now when we was thinking about what was it? The situation with our 1% businesses. It was because that comment a little threw me off, but it was the situation where they do hire a lot of people, right? They are in a very important position, but then when you look at certain things to do with how, let's see, best take it away, because it's something I was trying to come to.
I understand what you're saying. So let me give you this perspective.
It was
right?
this thing.
And it was something anybody who want to understand the mindset of big business, go on YouTube and look for the documentary on Amazon, Jeff Bezos. from Ruin to Rain or something like that, a PBS documentary. I watched it 2 nights ago, and they had a word for Bezos. They call him relentless, and they interview a set of workers of Amazon fellas, and a set of men had to actually go into counseling and thing who working in these Amazon factories and thing now, right? Because their method of what they're basically saying is Amazon and these big businesses don't have an ethical anchor. You understand what I'm saying? So their ethical anchor is profits. You understand? And what you find with something like that is that that envelope keep pushing. And remember, that even came up when we were discussing the issue of what guides someone to say LGBTQ is good or bad. You understand? We say is now, and we end up saying it's now a conversation of morality, it's a conversation of ethics. You understand? And what really anchors your ethics. So one of the things that come up from that Amazon thing is that when it is you actually get an order comes in, this is the person working on the ground in the actual factory, right? You get a counter that counts down on you 20 seconds. And like an actual countdown, fellas, that's on your screen. And if you miss 3 countdowns for a week, like you don't think by the time I hit 0, you get a warning letter. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they say people have to go to counseling for that. Now he will argue, and he did argue in the documentary. In California, they employ over 1,600 people or something like that. It was that same kind of rhetoric, but then the interviewer told him, yeah, but you all also discourage unions. And you don't allow unions to actually form in Amazon. And he was like, yeah, well, we don't really believe in unions and that kind of thing because we don't believe what unions advocating for, we should advocate for it as the CEO and this kind of thing. And he was like, yeah, but unions don't really work like that. So it's that kind of perspective now, boy, of what is the ethical ground in that is that I giving you something is not good enough. What it is, what is your, and you see, you could think of it that, well, yeah, they have a word for it now, corporate social responsibility.
I
But
remember
the
now.
amount of ways men just want to dance that. You understand what I'm saying? Let me hear you.
So, and a testament to this whole thing about, ethics and so on, and how much we kind of in a position where, we, is like, all right, so what is the real scene then? Because, okay, take this for example, where you have these big supermarket chains in Trinidad, right? Huge, we know them, right? And they're owned by the conglomerates and so on, okay? And these are the places that come, like the closest thing we have to, like, the Walmarts or whatever you want to call it in America, if you want to call it that, So we have we big outposts with branches and thing, and you're getting everything there. When you go into there, right, the kind of products are there, and the kind of situation we facing in Trinidad for the longest while, and you ask yourself, right, if it is we were very serious as a nation and our governments were that serious about our revenue and the fact that we were bleeding with the foreign exchange and all of this thing and where it's coming from, right? And where it's going to, and how much the common man can't access XYZ, or the main fact that how we just importing too much and all of this kind of thing, right? Our imports vastly outweigh our exports, right? You could see any government telling these chains with just like how we have these public health ordinances and this kind of thing because of the pandemic, right? Telling them that, okay, you see these goods here, we don't need it. If all they're bringing it in, just like how cement now and thing is how they could just change the price on it, and how they could just tell me, oh, you can't bring in this kind of thing for yourself. You can't bring in those goods. Those goods just come like luxury goods now. So all these Folgers and all these things, let them buy Hongwing. You understand? Why it is that it never happen? Because they can't do it. They can't do it. They can't do it. How many of the products that you see in the big supermarket chains that you have or any supermarket for that matter, but the big ones that have and all the things they can't find everywhere else. How much of those things in our country are we saying we in these dire times, right? Where things real bad, where the oil price going down and you can't for 8 years now, how much you can't stop talking about the previous administration. So when we go in and say, Hongwing does use local coffee, you have it there. But again, sorry to use Hongwing as an example, but what I'm trying to say is the thing of the fact that so I might be wrong with the Hongwing, sorry there, Julian. But we can never make that jump. We can never make that jump and tell them to cut down on that and restrict people's need for these kind of things, because that would just take away from the people who making that big money in that way. If you understand what I'm saying, Leslie, for all these luxury goods that we do need.
Let me carry it further. And one of the episodes that are really keen on, but that's a quarter 4 episode, because quarter 4, fellas, watch me, get ready, fellas. Quarter 4 gonna be next level, fellas. We blasting off to outer space. You understand what I'm saying? It's real heights in quarter 4. I have a partner who I went to China with, by a big up Omar Dat Maraj, right? I'll try and connect with the man. The man is an agri-scientist. He's doing a PhD, and he's a real big advocate for food security and things that way. And carry the conversation of what Trinidad need to do in order to increase food security. You wouldn't believe, he's always been writing on the newspapers on thing, right? You wouldn't believe the kind of dimensions. I mean, Julian hinted to some of the issues, because if you remember when money, and that to me, Kata, I don't think that's an individual government thing. You understand? I think that's a governance post-colonial system. Every government that come in just rolling with the thing to continue facilitating the big business. But why saying is, if a man want to break out of that mold, you understand, the conversation will eventually must buck heads with the question of land. Because I know plenty people in 1%. Here now, men just get, you ever hear about a crown grant, right? No, a crown grant is? Crown grant is the queen. Just saying, right? Well, nobody here, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
big. Who started off like general and that kind of thing. You understand? Yeah, crown grant whole 40 acres. You understand? So you see, people now who have the mindset and the fortitude and the relentless vibes to say, well, you know what, I want to make it. The first problem you're going to bounce up on is, well, where my land? I will need land in order to produce something like that. You understand? And you would find when you start to look for land in Trinidad, that is like a serious problem. You understand? Because in Trinidad itself, as Dylan was mentioning, I mean, the legal aspect of this thing, it just so old school, but it's designed to keep down certain men now. Boy, if you had to get 10 acres, you wouldn't believe what you had to go through in order to buy it. It's set up for men who just are inherit. Because when I deal with certain men, it was the first time I talk to men say, well, how much you have in your inheritance still, boy? And I watch the man. I just try to keep up with the conversation now, but I just said, your inheritance? I don't even know what but it's
it is what it is. Like it is what it is.
Come and just, you understand? But we always talk. Remember in the early scatter, we always talk. Heights Room is about bringing from facts to truth. Remember we talk that, Kata? From facts to truth is that, listen, no matter what problem we're facing, listen, have faith. Do the work, do the research, it have a way. Because technology now, Kata, is big disruptors in the agricultural sector. You understand? AI, you understand technology, you don't need no set land. You understand what I'm saying? Now, has technology reached the point whereby you could do organic farming? Because of course the biggest problem of doing the hydroponics and that kind of people say, well, it's pure chemicals. You understand? That is a conversation we have to have eventually. You understand what I'm saying? So all our vibes now, boy.
I had the links and the fixes for the talk about that AI and things, because I know some people who, and again, you're seeing the barriers that people want to get these things on the ground, right, in Trinidad, and it's like barriers now, boy.
And
although we're supposed to be promoting them things, we're supposed to be promoting them things.
I get a lightning bolt there. Let me get a lightning bolt one time. You understand? Because here we go on. You see what we're talking there. People that get tied up. That tied to the Taliban. I'm not say how that tied to the Taliban. You understand what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? Let me tell you what tied to the Taliban. No, the Taliban is a very complex story. Natural resources. You talk like a general in the Heights Room there. You understand? one of the Afghanistan's biggest contributors to the world economy is lithium. Lithium is used to create lithium ion batteries. A lot of people were confused why you're having these super rich people rush into space. And we're putting it out there now. We'll put out a call for guests very soon, people. But we're looking for guests for something called asteroid mining. You understand what I'm saying? And the talk on the ground is that is what people rush into space for. You understand what I'm saying? So exactly what the war in Afghanistan right now is about. Russia, China, the Taliban themselves, you understand? The people in Afghanistan, Pakistan, all of them rushing for the lithium and the poppy fields. What they're looking for is, because think about it, Qatar, consumerism and demand for consumer products not dropping. You understand?
Nah,
So
come
if it
on.
is,
If
you
anything, it
understand?
went
Well, I'm
up.
showing you.
Man,
But I'm showing you.
it went
Work
up.
on- and I come back to what I'm saying. You walk in the grocery,
Yeah.
nobody's saying,
Yeah.
well, things kind of hard right now. We had to kind of take with time. Nobody gonna take the time when
Yeah.
it comes in. Dog, it having more phone. It having more
That's
update.
right.
It having more thing. It's
That's
not like
right.
we're gonna say, okay, here what? These all this billions and billions of dollars, we're gonna
Yeah.
divert into this
The
thing. No.
content.
Bring in the next 0.2 phone in the next 2 months, please.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
I want the,
iPhone
I want the
20.
S. I want the S. He want the
Yeah.
plus.
You want
Don't
the
play
U
around with that.
phone.
Nah.
You know what I'm
We
saying?
want.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't stop that. You can't stop it. You can't stop it. But it is what it is.
But where the
It is what it
resources
is.
going and come from?
Exactly.
You understand? So they had to go to space. You understand what I'm saying? So
Hey,
don't get tired.
so
Amazon
don't go
set
in.
up the infrastructure. Amazon you go get 3-day prime shipping from the moon if you want a moon rock. You understand? Don't
So
get
are
tired.
we?
You know?
So are you trying to say that in a matter of 20 years or so, we are going to see men with AKs dancing on the flicking
Easy.
Mars?
Why I think
with
it has space
easy.
first? Or if you jump stupid,
Yeah.
why you putting everything in space? Blah 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 blah.
Uh,
Them know what they're doing.
uh,
Them know what they're
Watch
doing.
what
it.
they doing?
So men gonna was in the Kiki with the Taliban drop on the Mars. But
You
they say
love me.
Russia has left Romulan 5 Mars. Russia has left the Taliban on Mars. Yeah, you understand?
Oh,
But you know, it
that's it.
You
you
know,
know,
yeah.
again, it comes on people go be like, what kind of, well, listen, let's go on the heights. Well, they're talking too much heights, but again, at the end of the day, right? We see for a fact that people they go watch friggin' movie, right? They go watch Contagion, right? They go watch Outbreak, and then they go be like, well, what really going on in the world today, boy? How this happen? It's like the heights always was there. When men
Heights was
Torian
always
was showing you, Torian was done showing you what going on in space. Torian don't know what show, he don't know what's going on.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Torian done contact Mark Lard on them up in the
Yeah.
Say Mark Lard, it's Mark Lard. Torian is how Mark Lard is. Torian pull off his kids too. Torian is how Mark Lard. But anyhow, people,
what you listen,
it was alright. It was people, horse. So, I tell you, Philip Ball, how the Anunnaki. Philip Ball, the Anunnaki, Philip Ball, that's how coronaviruses have been here since the Anunnaki, and we have antibodies, right? We can fight it with antibodies, and that is a problem because real people fighting corona and the antibodies not there. Corona is a very, very strange thing, and I wouldn't mind bringing on a man a day. But I think we'll get a fella to come and talk about what he really think of where the corona start and thing, because that's our next whole wild heights and thing,
That's right.
But
That's right.
with that being said, people, we want to close off for tonight. It was a real nice recap episode. We
Good
just want to
line.
rock back a bit, talk the line a bit, just have a little chatter. We know all the generals who always here down in the comments there, giving we the vibes and support. We coming with something big, right? But we still have to make sure and cross your eyes. I mean, cross with T's and dot with I's.
That's right. Cross the eyes too. Crossing everything.
Easy day, Mark.
Cross with T's and dot with I's. But we have something big coming next week. So by Friday, you should hear about that. So just give me a little time to just put everything in place.
Share it up.
And we will see you all next week. So make sure when we do drop it, share it up. We can't bust it yet because I don't want to be a setup man. All right? So with all that being said, pick up all yourself. Let's see. It rain by you?
Right. Yeah,
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 Rain
real
falling
rain
by
in the
someone.
background.
Real
There,
rain, I hear that.
see? Yeah.
Yeah,
Tell
we
go
in
put some
a
good
rain.
tonight.
Yeah. She was better not to take your time. She was better not to take your time. All right, people, we go talk.
Right.
Later.
Yes, I bless up.